you've already closed it out, so how would you restart a file that you've already closed out?
That's a good question. So you use the log, same command, log using text, but then you use append to stick it either on the bottom of the log file, or replace if you just want to completely replace it.
Okay, so append.
Append. It's either append to add it on or replace. Append or replace. Okay? So let's just quickly calculate the fraction of teenage mothers in the sample. So how do we do that again? We just go back to count. Just want to count if the age of the mother is less than or equal to 19. That's that number again. You see that that's a scalar return. Save it as you would before. Get the denominator again. And just as Jamie said, we don't need to use the return list command. So I'm just going to call this t denominator. And let's just see if that worked out. So the fraction of teen mothers we have is 0.108 approximately. And the dummy variable, the mean of the dummy variable is 0.108. Makes total sense, right? The average number when you have ones for every time you have a teenage mother and 0 when you don't should be exactly the same fraction as you would calculating the fraction straight up. Just wanted to show you that and give you some more practice using the local variable function. Any questions before we move on to the more complex but sort of payoff points with the do files? All right, so here's what this has all been leading up to. STATA is called statistical programming software not merely because it can run simple statistical calculations, but because it has a programming function as well. You're going to start to be able to do much more complex multi-step things in STATA, and the way you'll be able to do that is to use its sort of programming function. So what we're going to do is to start using something called a do file. It's called a do file for two reasons. One, it does stuff very quickly and efficiently once you double click on it, and two, its file extension is .do. So those are two things to remember. There are three things to do to create a do file. This is on page 6 of the handout. You want to use a plain text editor. On a PC, you should use Notepad, which is included and free with everybody's computer. The reason, and on a Mac, I looked it up on the internet, but I don't really know, so Luke and Katie, you can tell me if you know what your basic text editor is. It's either TextEdit or Simple Text?
TextEdit.
TextEdit. Thanks. So TextEdit on a Mac and Notepad on a PC. The reason you want to do this is, STATA, as I said before, is really quite anal about the kinds of characters you have in, like those single quotation marks. So if you're using something like Microsoft Word will automatically use a different character, the curved quotation marks, both in dialogue and when you use them as single marks. You can't do that. It'll mess you up forever, and this is what messed me up for 30 minutes a day. So you want to use the program that's as simple as possible that gets the job done. And that's a simple text editor. You'll sometimes hear people refer to it as an ASCII editor. Notepad for PCs. What program you have for Macs?
TextEdit.
TextEdit. So there you go. So the first thing to do in creating a do file is to open up the text editing program. For me, it's Notepad. And on PCs, you go to the Start menu, All Programs. Once you have Vista, then just type Notepad in your search window. Accessories, Notepad. Simple, clean, wonderful. This is what it looks like. And do the same for Mac, so just open it up, because I don't use a Mac, so I don't know where to go. So the first thing you're going to do then, the second thing you'll do after opening up the text editor is go to Save As. Make sure you're in your working directory. For me, it's QM data. I'm here. Notice that the default file setting to Save As is .txt. You've got to change that. You've got to change it every time you get in the habit of changing it. Because otherwise, your do files won't work and you won't know why. Change save as type to all files. From there, title it something useful. Today, I don't know.
Ours is, sorry.
Yes.
Ours is RTF as the standard. Is that okay?
No.
It's not ASCII.
Yeah, it's not ASCII. Well, do you have options on your file save as type? File format?
Yeah, but none of them are, we don't have them all. There's like 7 choices.
Well, that's upsetting.
RTF might work.
Okay, try RTF.
Okay.
What about RTF with attachment?
Just go the plainest RTF you can find. That's with attachment, that's fine, but whatever. RTF could be fine. So let's just title this file today tab. We haven't I named yet. Example.do. You have to type in the .do to tell it, a Windows computer anyway. Sorry, I don't know what you have to do with Mac. Justin will be able to tell you. So you should ask him that by email if he doesn't tell you, and I'll try to get it to you if I find out. But name it on a PC, example.do, hit enter, and from henceforth, whenever you're in this notepad file, there'll be a .do file.
It doesn't work.
Doesn't work?
You cannot save this document with an extension .do at the end of the name. The required extension is RTF. You can either use both, cancel, or use RTF.
Just use both, and we'll just watch along here, and I'll tell you how to do it, or Lori will tell you.
What are your options? I don't know either.
You can cancel it. This is the options.
What
You can also
about
hide
that
extension.
open document text? Show me once more the options.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's not.
Seems like rich text is the best you could do, but no, that won't.
Well, I guess you can refer back to the handout, but just check it out up here, and then it'll be easy enough to do once you get this one step, which is stop you from doing it over with, and hopefully we can find out tonight if Justin emails back. So the first thing to know about the do file is that only one command can be entered per line. All the commands, like in STATA generally, are case sensitive, and all the file names are case sensitive. So that's why I keep telling you no spaces, lowercase for all your file names. That's going to be true throughout STATA. And that there's a new feature you can use called comments that'll be very useful, especially when you're building more complex statistical analyses. So what are comments? Comments are, if you look at page 6 on the bottom, there are 4 options of ways to indicate comments. You can begin the line with an asterisk, you can use the delimiter specified, or use two slashes. For today's, you can, whatever your preference is. I like number 2 because you can do it for either one line or multiple lines. So you only have to think of and remember this. So what I'm going to do today is just sort of use the number 2 option between these 2 delimiters. This is the way to open it, with the slash and the asterisk, and the way to close it is with the asterisk and then the slash.
So this is if you've got data and you're just like trying to remember why you're running these particular statistics.
That's right. Or you have a base data set, you don't really want to mess up the base data set, but you want to do a number of transformations. You want to create a couple of dummy variables. You then want to maybe use the log of a variable so you can sort of smooth the curve out before you do a logit-probit or other regression, depending on whether it's income or whatever, because log income is, for instance, a very useful measure. And you want to have this done every time. And you also, this is especially good if you are sort of still mucking around with your data set and don't want to have to enter all your transformations in every single time by hand. So with your base data set, you've changed something, maybe you found out, oh man, I'm missing these observations because I didn't import them correctly. So instead of having to run your calculations, your multiple lines of transformations calculations again, you simply take a new underlying data file, apply the do file to it, and come out with what you want every time. It's not only a huge time saver, but when you're going back and doing things and relooking at data and you don't remember how